Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, a new thriller with a great concept, Dead Mile by Jo Furniss. So this is a book with a central concept so immediately attention-grabbing that I couldn't wait to pick it up as soon as I heard about it. That concept is that it's a murder mystery set in a traffic jam. And indeed, the promotional material for this book suggests that it is the first book with that concept. So they're promoting it as the first gridlocked murder mystery. We've done a little bit of research on the channel to try and determine whether or not that is a true claim. And I will come back to that at the end of the video. But let's start by talking about the plot. So the book follows a female police officer, Belinda or Billy Kidd, who has been out of the country for a while. So she's travelling back from the airport. Her career is kind of on pause for various reasons that become apparent as the book progresses. And she gets stuck in traffic. So there is a complete gridlock. And the reason for that gridlock also becomes a plot point in the book. But while she is stuck in traffic, she realises that the driver of one of the other cars has been murdered, and she starts investigating that and starts trying to figure out who amongst the other people who are stuck in this traffic jam is the murderer. So in many ways this feels like quite a vintage setup. It's kind of a locked room mystery. So the car that the person has been murdered in is the locked room, and it's also a closed circle mystery. So you know that one of the people in the surrounding cars is the murderer, and Billy is trying to figure that out. The other part of it that made me think of the kind of golden age mysteries of yore, as those other two things did, is the fact that Billy is kind of an amateur detective. So it's quite interesting in that she's a professional, she is a police officer. But she hasn't been working as a police officer for a while, and because of this broader thing that's going on that's caused this gridlock, she's not able to, get support from other police officers. So she is stuck on her own with none of her normal equipment, trying to solve this murder. And she ends up doing things like using nappy bags as evidence bags and things like that. So Jo Furniss has some real fun with this concept of a police officer who is, outside of their normal role, but is still having to investigate a crime. So yeah, it's definitely a book with kind of a vintage golden age feel to it. But there are around that a load of, really modern concepts and ideas that are explored in the book. So I thought it was a really interesting mix of those two things. And the concept of crimes taking place in modes of transport, if you like, is also a really classic mystery novel theme. So I think of things like Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Death on the Nile. So modes of transportation are often used as a way of containing people, the people on a train, the people on a boat, and using a traffic jam for the same thing is really interesting. I was fortunate enough to see Jo Furniss speak at a book event recently, and she talked quite interestingly about the concept of car travel and how, if you think about motorway travel, it's something that's completely anonymous. So when you are travelling on a motorway, you might catch a glimpse of the people in the cars kind of whizzing past you, but you're all together on a stretch of road, but you never have any interaction with each other until you end up in a traffic jam. And as soon as you end up in that traffic jam, you are painfully close to all the people around you. She also talked about the fact that is a mode of transport, so like motorway driving, that is like a big equaliser, if you like. So you will get all sorts of different people travelling on a motorway at the same time, and when that traffic grinds to a halt, they all get thrown together. And that's quite different from something like Death on the Nile, where the people who are travelling are more people who are like each other. They are wealthier people. You think about people on on a cruise ship or something like that. I was listening to an episode of She Done It, the mystery podcast, the other day, which was about the Prohibition, and that talked really interestingly about a kind of subgenre of book during the Prohibition that was about people who were going on cruises in order to be able to drink. So Americans going on cruises cruise into international waters in order to be able to get access to booze. And there were a load of mysteries that were set in that kind of, that kind of setting. So yeah, the motorway is a really interesting one because it is a mode of transportation, but unlike a lot of the other settings for mysteries where you may have people who are like each other on that mode of transportation, on a motorway you get people who are very different from each other, and Jo Furniss definitely makes the most of that in this book. I thought her execution of the concept was really good. Billy as a central character is fantastic. She's a really enjoyable character to watch kind of go about solving this mystery. There's one element of the book I didn't like quite as much, which is that Jo Furniss has every so often these very short chapters which are written from the perspectives of other characters on the motorway, and I felt like that was kind of unnecessary. You could have left those chapters out and the book wouldn't have lost anything for it. People who've watched the channel for any length of time will know that I like my books to be as short as they can be, and that felt like some kind of additional padding in this book which wasn't necessarily necessary for the progression of the plot. But equally, those chapters are very, very short and they don't really get in the way. And the other characters that Billy encounters in her investigation are all interesting. There's an interesting range of different people there. So yeah, I thought the execution of the book maybe not quite as good as the concept, but close. And the concept is so good that it kept me turning the pages, definitely. So that brings me back to the question of, is this the first gridlocked murder mystery? Is this the first book to use that concept? And I think it might be in terms of books. So I have someone who helps me out with a bit of research on the channel now, Eerie. She did some digging and she couldn't find any other books with this concept. So Dead Mile may indeed be the first novel with a gridlocked murder mystery. However, Eerie did find a TV episode that has a similar concept. So that is an episode of the TV series Monk called Mr. Monk Gets Stuck in Traffic. So I watched it in my research for this episode, and it was a fun episode, and it's definitely similar. It does feature a murder mystery, as all episodes of Monk do, and it does feature a traffic jam. But in the Monk episode, the murderer murders someone right at the start of the episode and then deliberately crashes the car with their body in order to try and hide that murder. So the central reason for the traffic jam is the murder, which is very different from what Jo Furniss does in her book. There were some interesting other similarities though between the Monk episode and the book. Well, one of those is that there's a character in the Monk episode who needs to pee the whole way through the episode. And that's something that happens in the book as well. So Billy, the police officer, needs to pee all the way through the book. And there's a certain amount of kind of humorous tension that's woven around that. So that was a weird similarity between the two. One big difference though is that the Monk episode has a weird and uncomfortable cameo by the new metal rock band Korn. I don't know why they chose to put that into the episode, but it's very strange, and as cameos like that in TV shows always are, it just doesn't work at all. So fortunately, Dead Mile doesn't have anything like that in it at all. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. Do let me know if you can think of any gridlock murder mysteries. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.